Every single year, the island nation of Japan is hit by roughly 10,500 earthquakes. For the people living there, the ground shaking is as routine as a thunderstorm. To survive this constant geological assault, Japanese engineers had to rethink architecture. Take a look at this structural diagram of a modern skyscraper. Notice how the base isn't rigidly anchored to the bedrock. Instead, it sits on massive, flexible shock absorbers, allowing the entire structure to sway and absorb the violent lateral forces of an earthquake without collapsing. But hardware is only half the equation. Starting in early childhood, citizens undergo rigorous monthly drills, practicing exactly how to take cover underneath their wooden desks at a moment's notice. Between billion-dollar architectural innovations and deeply ingrained civic routines, Japan had effectively engineered a society capable of shrugging off the planet's most violent geological events. At 2:46 p.m. on March 11, 2011, centuries of tectonic friction reached a breaking point. This 3D map shows the Pacific Plate subducting beneath Japan. Over hundreds of years, the tension between these landmasses builds like a stretched rubber band, until the seafloor violently snaps upward by a staggering 50 meters. Before the shaking even reached the surface, Japan's early warning system triggered nationwide alarms. Racing at 300 kilometers per hour, 27 bullet trains instantly received the signal and automatically engaged their emergency brakes, coming to a safe halt without a single derailment. Then, the surface impact hit. For an agonizing 6 minutes, the fourth most powerful earthquake ever recorded battered the country. The 9.1 magnitude rupture released so much energy that it literally shifted the Earth's axis by 17 centimeters and slightly shortened the length of a day. When the ground finally settled, the skyscrapers were still standing, and the transit systems were intact. The world's most advanced disaster defense network had worked perfectly. Following the quake, coastal residents received automated alerts predicting a 6-meter wave. For a country guarded by massive 10-meter-high concrete seawalls, a 6-meter surge seemed like a highly manageable threat. But a tsunami behaves entirely differently than what you see at the beach. As this split screen illustrates, a normal surface wave is driven by wind. A tsunami, however, is an entire column of water displaced from the ocean floor to the surface, traveling through the deep ocean at the speed of a commercial jetliner, around 800 kilometers per hour. When that massive wall of deep ocean energy hits the shallow coastal shelf, it has nowhere to go but up. Its speed drops, but the water is squeezed vertically, multiplying its height far beyond those initial automated estimates. The ocean didn't send a 6-meter wave. In some areas, a 40-meter mountain of water slammed into the coast. It instantly swallowed the 10-meter walls, ripping apart thousands of tons of concrete blocks and turning them into heavy, destructive projectiles. The surge didn't stop at the shoreline. It pushed up to 10 kilometers inland, completely ignoring human infrastructure, engulfing places like Sendai Airport and erasing entire towns from the map. By relying on fixed concrete barriers built for historical averages, Japan had unknowingly trapped its citizens. Their strongest line of defense was rendered completely useless against the brute physical mass of the ocean. Down the coast, a third crisis was unfolding at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Much like the skyscrapers in Tokyo, the facility actually survived the initial earthquake exactly as designed. The reactors automatically shut down to halt their nuclear chain reactions. However, uranium fuel rods remain blisteringly hot for days after a shutdown. They require a constant, uninterrupted flow of cooling water to keep from melting. 50 minutes after the quake, a 14-meter-high wave slammed into the facility, easily cresting Fukushima's 10-meter protective seawall and flooding the entire complex. Here is exactly where the system failed. The plant's emergency backup diesel generators, the only things keeping those vital water pumps running, were installed in the basement. As the ocean cascaded into the lower levels, the generators were instantly submerged and destroyed. This triggered a station blackout, the absolute worst-case scenario where a plant loses all power and cooling capabilities. In pitch darkness, engineers desperately tried to wire car batteries to the control panels, reading highly critical temperature gauges with nothing but flashlights. Inside the reactors, the stagnant cooling water boiled away, exposing the nuclear fuel rods to the air. The intense heat stripped oxygen from the steam, filling the buildings with highly volatile hydrogen gas, which soon ignited into massive hydrogen explosions and a full-scale nuclear meltdown. The Earth had delivered a severe blow, but it was a human engineering decision, placing the backup tower for a nuclear facility in a flood-prone basement, that escalated a natural disaster into a radiological catastrophe. When the water finally retreated, the true cost came into focus. Roughly 20,000 lives were lost, entire municipalities were wiped clean off the map, and damages totaled $360 billion, cementing this as the most expensive natural disaster in recorded history. While the rigid, automated safety systems had collapsed under the pressure, human resilience held the line. A core group of workers, now known as the Fukushima 50, voluntarily stayed behind in the highly radioactive zone to manually vent the reactors, risking their own lives to prevent an even larger disaster. That same drive fueled an astonishingly rapid recovery. Sections of the Great Kanto Highway, which had been torn completely apart by massive seismic rifts, were repaved and fully reopened to traffic in just 6 days. In the decimated coastal city of Rikuzen, Takata, a massive forest of 70,000 cedar and pine trees was entirely uprooted by the waves, but one single tree remained standing, becoming known as the miracle pine, a living symbol of endurance. The events of March 11th proved that attempting to build walls high enough to dominate the Earth is a dangerous illusion. Our true strength lies not in achieving absolute control over nature, but in our capacity to adapt, endure, and rebuild from the rubble.